Hi, I'm Pam Reid, author of New Lenses, a prescription to see your adult children differently. I'm also the founder of a brand ministry called FLOW, an acronym that stands for Feel Love Over Worry. Welcome to this masterclass titled How to Flow with Your Adult Child. I like to start with acknowledging that being a parent is not easy. Yep, I know, we all know that. But for those of you listening who have young children, you are officially forewarned that being a parent of an adult child is actually harder. There's so much more to worry about when our children are older, and the consequences to the poor choices they make become greater and greater as they get older. Now, this class is not meant to bring you down or cause you to worry, but the truth is, what parent doesn't worry? I'll be sharing my interactions with other parents, some of my own experiences, my relationship with God, and how together it has all contributed to the coaching I provide parents today. Simply, I'm keeping it real. And having said that, what parent would ever imagine having to visit their child in jail? What parent would ever imagine losing their child to a drug overdose? What parent would ever imagine their child being anything other than a good contributing member of society? In the past few years, I've met a number of women who lost their son or daughter to an opioid overdose. I met a police officer who shared the story of his daughter with me. His daughter got mixed up with the wrong crowd and became addicted to drugs. She was doing things this police officer dad could have never imagined his sweet, smart, and talented daughter would do. He tried to pull her from this life. And being a police officer didn't give him some special powers or some special skill that the rest of us couldn't have access to. He tried all he knew how to do and still felt helpless until the day he received the call that she had overdosed and died. I've met men and women who are dealing with the fact that their child is in prison right now. They're devastated to get the call, yet feelings of frustration and anger creep in to justify their thoughts of leaving them there in hopes of teaching them a lesson. The immature behavior and poor choices need to stop. You want them to feel loved, yet the image you never want to have in your head is one where they are behind bars. So you delay your visit, or you just don't go at all. You just pay their bail so you can get them home quickly, where it's safe. I found myself there in that mental space of trying to decide what would be for my oldest daughter, what would be best for my oldest daughter, running around with the wrong crowd and carelessly, needlessly finding herself in trouble with the law. What would produce the best desired outcome? Who in the world knows the right answer? In situations like this, we're very driven and motivated by our feelings. And the one thing I know is that is never a good thing. Feelings. It's important to recognize them for exactly what they are. But first, let's consider what they are not. Feelings are not facts, and just because at some point in time you may feel helpless or hopeless, it doesn't mean that you are. Feelings can be awfully unreliable and uncontrollable at times. Joyce Meyer was quoted as saying, "Our feelings are unreliable and cannot be trusted to convey truth." Yet the truth is, we are feeling machines. We do have to be discerning, though. While on the one hand, feelings are considered unreliable, there are certainly situations when they might give important signals. A bad conscience might indicate something's wrong, and fear might signal danger. This is not, however, significant enough to trust feelings unconditionally, and most of us know that when emotions are high, it's not a good time to make big, life-changing decisions. When emotions are high, our judgment can be clouded, and it can become difficult to focus. The more emotional we feel, the less logical our thoughts might be. We know the best, most reliable decisions are based on facts and not feelings. But what about the feelings our children bring about, our significant others, or our jobs for that matter, what do? We have to make decisions. That's what. Decisions. If you struggle with this, there are a number of ways to improve your ability to make sound decisions and for this ability to become second nature. Here's a simple approach. Now, it'll sound more business-like than everyday life-like, but the skill, which can become habit, is transferable. So, start with your desired outcome. This is classic Stephen Covey habit number 2. Begin with the end in mind. This means to begin with a clear vision of your desired outcome. Then continue by flexing your proactive muscles to make things happen. Second, rely on quality data and valuable insights. Doing this helps your decision making to become more scientific and provides more control on outcomes. When my daughter found herself in trouble, I had to get the specifics and facts about what happened to fully understand the situation so I could make the most appropriate decision about next steps. Third, you can even use a SWOT analysis. Yes, SWOT. And I know it sounds and is to some degree super business-like, but it is a great decision-making tool and not just for business. Trust me. If you've never seen this acronym, it stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. It's ideal in helping you identify key issues that may have significant impact on the decisions you need to make. A SWOT analysis does not, however, offer solutions. You'll have to come up with those yourself based on the analysis of the information you have. Fourth, visualize possible outcomes. I often sit and contemplate the various ways a situation could play out, depending on how I decide to engage. And how about trusting your instincts? You can call it your gut feeling, your intuition, whatever you like. But some of the world's greatest leaders rely on their intuition to make some tough decisions, and they swear by it. I think your intuition is one of those things people can use every day, but underestimate its power when it comes to making decisions. So now I've saved the next one for last, not because it's least significant, but because I want this to be the last thing you remember so that hopefully it will be the first thing you consider. And it's the Holy Spirit, the greatest guide and counselor there is. Holy Spirit's job is to provide wisdom and understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, revelation, and gentle conviction. For those of you who are believers, all you have to do is ask. When I first moved to Atlanta, I visited quite a few churches before finding the church home that I still attend today. I recall one of the pastors gave a sermon on the consequences of letting your feelings dictate your actions. He told the story of a man who left his house in plenty of time to get to work on time. And being on time was critical for this man because he had just been given a warning that being late even one more day would result in his termination. Unfortunately, there was an accident that caused a great deal of traffic on the expressway this particular morning. Traffic had pretty much come to a halt. He fretted as his car and hundreds of other cars sat idle in what was now a parking lot on the expressway. As the minutes passed, he became more and more agitated, anxious, and frustrated. These feelings got the best of him, and he just, I don't know if it was absent-minded or what, but he got out of his car. And at this point, he knew he was sure to be late for work. In his worry and frustration, he began cursing at no one in particular. But a father who had his children in the car next to his did not appreciate his behavior and asked him to stop. The man, over the top with frustration and consumed with emotion, directed his negative energy towards the father. And then one thing led to another, and before you know it, a policeman was on the scene on his motorcycle. And the man was so out of control that the policeman had to call for backup and ultimately arrested the man. As his feelings dictated, the man never made it to work and so lost his job. And by the way, he ended up losing his wife that day as well. Why? How was that, you ask? Well, As it turns out, losing this job would be the sixth job the man had lost in the past year, and his wife had had enough. She made it clear just the week before that she was giving him just one more chance to keep a job and turn things around financially for the family. And if not, she was going to take the kids and go to live with her mother. The man's bail was set for $600, and he also was faced with the fees associated with having his car towed from the scene. Everyone in the congregation got the message the pastor was trying to convey. How much power do we give our feelings, and how critical is it that we don't give up control? Right now I'm reminded of 2 Timothy 1:7. The scripture states, God does not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. I got the message that day as well, but I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if the man had only called his job and asked his boss to look at the news. I bet there was some report or something about the accident and the traffic that day. All of that could have certainly been verified. And I'd like to believe that the boss would have made an exception for the man being late on that day. But you know what? I can't judge. I can't judge. I've got quite a few examples of letting my own emotions get the best of me. And I've even got even more examples of my oldest daughter allowing her feelings and emotions to get the best of her, which resulted in a number of situations where my husband and I had to rescue her from herself. Yep, rescue her from herself. I would always tell my daughter and countless other young women that their words, their actions, and behaviors will always let the world know how to treat them. That feelings of high self worth and self confidence are important aspects of being their healthiest and best self. Every time we respond to something, anything, we get to decide how and what it looks like, especially to others. Here's an example. Imagine if every time we have a project, we find ourselves dilly-dallying and putting things off until the last minute. That means we most likely have a habit of procrastination. This does not mean that we're procrastinators. It just means we have the habit. We don't feel like getting started. We don't feel like being mindful. We don't feel like this or that. Whatever it is, it's driven by our feelings. Developing new positive life affirming habits are not easy, especially with the fact that the habits we formed during our formative years become harder and harder to replace as time moves forward. It's not impossible, it's just harder. So, what do? How do we begin? This is going to sound like a contradiction, but we need to start with a feeling. Yes, a very powerful feeling. And you know what I'm talking about. It's the feeling you get when the doctor tells you that you'll die or something awful will happen if you don't lose weight. How instantly motivated you are to diet and exercise so you could be around a little longer for your loved ones. Yeah, you do want to be around for your children's wedding and you want to be around to see and enjoy your grandchildren. It's that feeling right there when your boss puts you on a warning if you don't improve your work performance. That fight or flight feeling that you must respond or do something to change the situation. Yes, fight or flight. For some people, it's a terrifying thought to lose their spouse, their job, their reputation, their whatever is important enough to motivate them into action. If you don't feel the power of the feeling generated by the thought of losing something or someone, or the feeling generated by the fact that an unwanted situation will result if you don't do something, it's very difficult to develop new, good, sustainable habits when the feelings aren't there. I had a woman's heart health screening at my local hospital about a year ago. And I made the appointment when I was reminded that heart disease is the leading cause of death in women and that the symptoms almost always go unnoticed. Well, outwardly, everything looked good to the doctor, right? But when my blood work came back, it was an entirely different story. My numbers, quote unquote, were not good. I had to make some changes. It was that or go on medication. I can tell you right now that I went cold turkey with my dietary changes the same day. And that exercise part, that was actually easy because I had just registered for my first full marathon. So training was already in motion. But I'm proud to say that today my numbers are excellent and I'm doing what I need to do to maintain them. So, like the unfortunate situation with the man on the expressway and where he found himself, right, on his way to work that dreadful morning, what do you do when things don't go the way you planned? Perhaps you allowed your feelings to dictate your responses, especially to your adult children, especially if they're not doing what you need them to do. And now you feel regret. Okay, maybe you don't feel regret, but you recognize you could have handled things differently, better even. When we create an undesired outcome, we don't have to feel condemned by it. We can feel some conviction, but we can acknowledge it and use the experience for a better outcome the next time around. Period. Every time our minds want to replay something, we can just acknowledge it and replace it with the visual of a better outcome for the next time. Now, I know I'm making it sound simple, and it's not. You've got to practice it. And by the way, not only do you have to practice it, you're going to have to practice it some more and then practice it again. And when you do, you also have to make sure there's an equally positive feeling to accompany it because it's the feeling that will drive the change. So, in closing, here are two things I want to leave you with. The first is a personal prescription for your quote unquote new lenses. So, I went to visit my oldest daughter's high school counselor during her junior year. I was asking for advice as well as her thoughts on the behavior and recent choices my daughter had been making. The counselor was a kind person. She had a kind face and a super sweet disposition. She listened to me, then shared some of what she's seen and experienced in her 30 plus years as a school guidance counselor. She talked to a countless number of parents like me, and she ended our talk with these words of advice: just love her through it. Well, it's not been easy, but that's what I've been doing from the very beginning. When you can't figure it out, when you have days that are tougher than others, choose to love anyway. The next day is a new day, a chance to try again and to love some more. And so here's the second and last thing. It's an exercise I'd like you to try. So I want you to find a space where you can be alone and where it's nice and quiet and there'll be no distractions for at least 20 minutes. If you feel a strong urge to write things down while going through this mental exercise, go ahead and do it. But ideally, I want you to capture your thoughts and feelings at the end. But I don't want anything to keep you from going through this exercise fully. Now, you're in this quiet space. There are no distractions. I want you to consider one thing, a situation or circumstance that you're dealing with in your life right now. And of course, ideally, if it's, a situation with your adult child, then that would be ideal. It needs to be the thing that will require you to engage, to do something. Mentally inventory the facts around the thing you've chosen. All the facts, please, even the ones that don't support your agenda. Consider the possible ways you might engage or respond and play out in your mind each possible way you might engage or respond and what the outcome would be for each. If you've reflected on 3 different ways, then there should be 3 different scenarios being played out in your mind, one at a time with a defined beginning and end. Don't rush. Now, here's the key. It's important to recognize and acknowledge what you're feeling as you play out each scenario. I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to ask you to be part of Flow Nation, and you can do that by visiting my website, which is pamreidtheflowboss.com. You can follow me on Instagram at the Flow Boss, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is the Flow Boss. Whatever it is you do, I do hope to see you again. Thank you.